right about time to bring you up to speed with what's happening globally and 9/11. Let's begin with United Nations holds operations in Houthi area after staff detained. North Korea vows retaliation as U.S. submarine docks in Busan. Trump imposes 25% tariff on steel aluminum, says no exceptions. Trump administration to bar transgender people from the military, and Trump warns of chaos if Hamas keeps hostages past Saturday. Stay with me for this more stories. A United Nations spokesperson said the United Nations has briefly halted all operations in Yemen's Sada region after Houthi authorities detained 8 more of its staff. These extraordinary and temporary measures seek to balance the imperative to stay and deliver what they need to have the safety and security of the United Nations personnel and its partners guaranteed, United Nations Deputy Spokesperson Farhan Haq said on Monday. Such guarantees are ultimately required to ensure the effectiveness and sustainability of our efforts, he added. 7 United Nations agencies presently operate in Sada, a Houthi stronghold in Yemen's north, including the World Food Programme, the World Health Organization, and the Children's Agency UNICEF. Haq said he could not say how many people in Yemen will be impacted by the pause in United Nations operations, but said the world body remains fully committed to assist the millions of people in need across the country. The Houthis, who did not immediately acknowledge the United Nations decision, have apprehended dozens of UN staff since 2021, and the group had at least 24 people in detention before the newest arrests. So far, no United Nations staffers have been released, and the group has paraded them on television channels where they are presented as collaborators with Western intelligence agencies and Israel. The United Nations earlier halted all travel into areas held by the Houthis in January 24th after an indefinite number of staff were detained by the rebel group. It is uncertain why United Nations staff were still present in Sada at the time of the arrest. The Iran-backed Houthis have controlled most of Yemen, including the capital Sana'a, since seizing power in 2014 and early 2015. The group has been at war with Saudi-led coalition that is fighting on behalf of Yemen's exiled government. Over a decade of war has left 150,000 people dead in Yemen. The country is also experiencing one of the world's worst humanitarian crunch, with over 18 million people in dire need of assistance, according to the United Nations. The Houthis' aim in the UN comes as the armed group has been winding down its campaign of attacks against targets in Israel, as well as international shipping in the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden. The group started their campaign in solidarity with the people of Gaza in November 2023, saying it would cease its attacks after a ceasefire was reached between Israel and Hamas. United States President Donald Trump in January reinstated the Houthis' designation as a terrorist organization, which he had put in place during his first term before it was revoked by U.S. President Joe Biden. North Korea has said its military forces are prepared to take any action required after a U.S. Navy fast-attack nuclear submarine docked in a port in the South Korean city of Busan and accused the United States of posing a grave threat to its national security. Report on Tuesday quoted the country's Ministry of Defense as saying in a statement that the presence of a U.S. nuclear submarine on the Korean peninsula was a clear expression of the U.S. invariable hysteria for confrontation. North Korea will unhesitantly exercise the legitimate right to punish the provokers, as it accused the U.S. of being a hegemonic entity which blindly involves and believes in domination through power, the ministry said. On Monday, the USS Alexandria submarine docked at the Busan port for supplies and to provide a rest for its crew, according to South Korea's defense ministry, adding that the stop will also provide a chance for the South Korean and U.S. navies to exchange information and formulate a joint defense posture. The USS Alexandria, part of the U.S.'s Pacific Fleet, is a fast-attack nuclear-powered submarine armed with Tomahawk cruise missiles. Pyongyang claims that joint U.S.-South Korea military activities are a threat to peace on the Korean peninsula and regards them as rehearsals for an invasion of North Korea. North Korea on Sunday cautioned of undesirable consequences after a series of exercises was conducted by the U.S. and South Korean allies just 16 miles, 25.7 kilometers from North Korea's border. North Korea has ramped up its rhetoric since U.S. President Donald Trump took office last month, despite the U.S. president's comments suggesting he plans to reach out to leader Kim Jong-un for direct discussions. Despite the U.S. enforcing heavy sanctions on Pyongyang and occasional bouts of name-calling, Trump and Kim enjoyed a unusually strong rapport during the U.S. president's first term. Trump met with Kim on 3 separate occasions between 2018 and 2019 and made history by becoming the first sitting U.S. president to step onto North Korean soil since a 1953 armistice brought a de facto end to the Korean War. Still in the United States, Donald Trump, United States President, has slammed 25% tariffs on all steel and aluminium imports in his newest push to reshape an international trading order that he assertions is unfairly stacked against U.S. manufacturers and workers. Speaking from the White House as he announced his latest trade salvo on Monday, Trump said U.S. industry has been pummeled by both friend and foe alike. Trump said the tariffs, which he had floated on Sunday, would apply to all countries with no exceptions and no exemptions. His newest tariffs, which are due to take effect on March 12th, are all but certain to stoke retaliatory steps from impacted countries, which include some of Washington's closest allies, raising the likelihood of new trade skirmishes on several fronts. Gabriel Waldo, Senior Vice President at the global business advisory firm Teneo, said according to reports that Trump's latest tariffs on steel and aluminium are not enough by themselves to ignite a full-blown trade war, but it's definitely an incremental move in that direction. U.S. trading partners in Europe and Asia are virtually certain to retaliate, but this retaliation is likely to take the form of comparably narrow sectoral tariffs. The U.S. imported closely $49 billion worth of steel and aluminium in 2024, according to government data. Canada was the biggest supplier of steel, followed by Mexico, Brazil, South Korea, Germany, and Japan, according to the U.S. International Trade Administration. Canada was also the biggest exporter of aluminium, with other major suppliers including the United Arab Emirates, South Korea, and China. Trump's announcement triggered an almost immediate backlash in Canada. Mark Carney, the front-runner to replace outgoing Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau as leader of the Liberal Party, said in a statement that Trump wants us to lose our cool, but we need to stay united with the right to response. In the short term, Canada needs to manage foreign trade threats with dollar-for-dollar tariffs and support for our critical steel and aluminium workers. In Asia, markets mostly reacted negatively to the news, with benchmark indexes falling in Hong Kong, Shanghai, Kuala Lumpur, Jakarta, and Manila, though the Kospi and Seoul saw gains. The United States military has declared it will no longer accept transgender people wanting to enlist or facilitate gender affirmation procedures for active service members. The memo filed at the U.S. District Court in Washington, D.C. on Monday is the newest effort by the Trump administration to roll back protections for transgender people. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth wrote in the memo, which was dated February 7th, effective immediately, all new accessions for individuals with a history of gender dysphoria are paused. Also on schedule or planned medical procedures associated with affirming or facilitating a gender transition for service members are also halted. The Trump administration has framed the restriction of transgender rights in the military as a key step in ensuring military readiness. It also has lambasted what it terms the promotion of radical gender ideology within the armed forces, part of its bigger campaign against diversity initiatives. But critics say on Monday's memo and leaked measures are targeted at erasing transgender identity, perpetuating discrimination, and forcing transgender service members to live in secrecy and fear. Advocates say as numerous as 15,000 transgender people presently serve in the U.S. military out of a population of 1.3 million active duty service members. In the U.S., there is relatively broad support for transgender soldiers and military members. The research from Gallup published a report on Monday that found 58% of Americans approve of allowing openly transgender people to serve in the military. But Gallup noted that this number had fallen from earlier highs. In 2019, for instance, the approval rating was 71%. By 2021, however, it had dropped to 66% and then to 58% this year. The firm noted that Republicans and to a lesser extent independents had driven the number down. Ex-President Joe Biden cancelled that restriction, but as Trump took office for his second term this year, he renewed his campaign against transgender people, signing an executive order on his first day back refuting the existence of self-assessed gender identity. A few days later, on January 27th, he signed another executive order directed specifically at the military. Meanwhile, on Monday, President Donald Trump urged Israel to cancel its ceasefire deal with Hamas and let all hell break out if Hamas does not return hostages still being held in Gaza by noon on Saturday. Hamas early on Monday threatened to postpone the next hostage release planned to take place on Saturday until further notice, accusing Israel of breaking the ceasefire deal. As far as I'm concerned, if all of the hostages aren't returned by Saturday at 12 o'clock, I think it's an appropriate time, I would say, cancel it and all bets are off and let hell break out, the president said, according to report in the Oval Office after signing executive actions. Pressed on what all hell might entail in Gaza, Trump said, "You'll find out and they will find out. Hamas will find out what I mean." Trump expressed skepticism that several hostages remain alive to release, saying, "I think a lot of the hostages are dead." Steve Witkoff, Trump's Middle East envoy, was involved in deliberating the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, which was secured in the waning days of President Joe Biden's administration. But since taking office, Trump has suggested he wasn't sure the ceasefire would hold. His plan to permanently displace Palestinians from Gaza and for the United States to own the Strip has injected yet more uncertainty into the process. He said explicitly in an interview this weekend that Palestinians will not have a right to return to Gaza under his plan to take U.S. ownership of the Strip and rebuild it. Trump's claim that Palestinians wouldn't be entitled to return to Gaza is certain to expand international opposition to the proposal, which drew outcry when he first announced it last week at a news conference alongside Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. On Monday also, one day before meeting with Jordan's King Abdullah at the White House, Trump suggested that he could withhold support from Jordan and Egypt if they do not accept new Palestinian refugees. Abdullah, along with his counterparts in Egypt and other Arab nations, has flatly rejected Trump's plan. Trump had already been talking about making a deal with Jordan and Egypt to take in more Palestinians, invoking the money America sends the two nations. On more stories, and in Africa, the embattled DRC, Goma residents fear rising tensions and escalations. The situation in Bukavu is progressively tense as the process of military forces intensifies, with rising concerns about the security of the city and its environs. Local interviews paint a picture of growing fear and uncertainty among the population. Raymond Mukobelwa notes that the unrest has spread beyond Bukavu, impacting close by Nova and Bibuhe. This has led several people to flee toward neighboring countries, including Burundi and Tanzania. As a result, there has been a rise in demand for necessities such as flour and salt. Some residents have also begun relocating from Kavumu to Bukavu for safety. There's also an overarching sense of doubt about the prospects for peace in the South Kivu region and Bukavu in particular. Meanwhile, Furaha Ntawanja expresses the toll ongoing violence has taken on the people, especially the constant fear and stress. The sight of military trucks and the arrival of soldiers has become a regular source of anxiety, with locals feeling exhausted, sleepless, and overwhelmed by the war's effect on their daily lives. The cumulative impact of these interviews reveals a city in turmoil with a vague future and a population yearning for stability. Let's take a breather. When we come back, more stories from Nigeria. Don't go anywhere, please. Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. We continue with the news stories. Now, South Supreme Court rejects Fubara's appeal against Amwahili-led lawmakers. On Monday, the Supreme Court dismissed an appeal that Governor Similayo Fubara filed to challenge the Court of Appeal judgment that affirmed Honorable Martin Mwahuli as the authentic Speaker of the Rivers State Assembly. A five-member panel of the Apex Court, headed by Justice Umwani Abaaji, discharged the appeal marked SC/CV/1071/2024 after it was withdrawn. Though the matter was initially fixed for hearing, however, when it was called up, Governor Fubara, through his team of lawyers led by Yusuf Ali San, announced his decision to withdraw the appeal. Ali San told the court that his client's decision was based on the fact that the matter had been overtaken by event, whereas Chief Wole Olani Pekun's son, who appeared for the Mwahule-led River State lawmakers, did not oppose the withdrawal. He nevertheless demanded the cost. Similarly, J.B. Doudu, who appeared for the third and 12th defendants, also asked for costs, even though he did not object to the notice of withdrawal. The defendants further convinced the Apex Court to dismiss the matter instead of striking it out, emphasizing that he had already exchanged processes with the appellant. Consequently, in its ruling, the Justice Abaaji-led panel dismissed the appeal, even as it was awarded 4 million naira costs against Fubara. Remember that the appeal court in Abuja had in a unanimous verdict and delivered on October 10th, 2024, validated the Amhawule-led members of the assembly as bona fide lawmakers for the state. A three-member panel of the appellate court led by Justice Joseph Oyewole, while dismissing an appeal that was lodged by Governor Fubara, upheld a judgment the Federal High Court delivered on January 22nd, 2024, which nullified the 2024 budget of River State on the premise that it was not presented before members of the State Assembly that were known to the law. Fubara shot himself in the foot when he voluntarily withdrew a counter affidavit he filed to challenge a legal action that Mahue-led lawmakers instituted to be recognized as valid members of the River State House of Assembly, according to the appellate court. The court held that Governor Fubara's decision to present the 2024 River State Appropriation Bill to only 4 out of 31 members of the Assembly resulted to a gross violation of Section 91 of the 1999 Constitution as amended as an act of executive recklessness. The appellate court held that the absence of any documents from Fubara to contradict all the claims the Umwahule-led lawmakers made in their suit meant that he admitted all the facts they stated in the matter. It accused Fubara of secretly trying to set aside orders of the trial court through the appeal, saying the mistake he made by withdrawing his counter affidavit to the originating suit could not be redeemed by brilliant advocacy. Maintaining that Fubara's loss was self-inflicted, the appellate court held that since the counter affidavit was withdrawn, the appellant is deemed to have admitted the rather weighty facts that were presented by the respondents. Still on the news, on politics, Atiku Tambuwal, others visit Obasanjo in Abeokuta. Ex-Vice President Atiku Abubakar and former Governor of Sokoto Aminu Tambuwal, among others, held a closed-door meeting with former President Olusegun Obasanjo in Abeokuta, the Ogun State capital. Atiku, who arrived at Obasanjo's Abeokuta residence located within the area of the Olusegun Obasanjo Presidential Library at precisely 12:37 p.m. local time, was accompanied by former Governor of Cross River State, Senator Leo Imoke, and Tambuwal, among other political stalwarts from the northern region. He and members of his entourage upon arrival were received at the Obasanjo's residence by the elder statesman Otumba Oyewole Fasawi, before they all went straight upstairs into a private meeting with his former boss Obasanjo, who had been awaiting for his visitors. Though details of the visit could not be established, it was however collected that the meeting might not be unrelated with Atiku's 2027 presidential ambition, mainly considering the caliber of the personalities involved. And finally, on the news on judicial matters, court indefinitely adjourns Nnamdi Kanu's trial after protest. In Abuja on Monday, the Federal High Court adjourned indefinitely the terrorism trial of Nnamdi Kanu, leader of the proscribed indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, after he queried the trial judge's objectivity. Judge Binta Nyako announced the indefinite postponement of the proceedings following Kanu's protest, the second instance in about 4.5 months, that the IPOB leader has voiced a lack of confidence in her handling of the case. Kanu said during the proceedings that he was not happy with the decision of the chief judge returning the case to Mrs. Nyako. The IPOB leader said he was only in court due to the respect he had for the rule of law, adding that the judge had earlier recused herself from the case. He said he could not be prosecuted while the case remained with Mrs. Nyako. Prosecutor Adegboyega Awomolo, a senior advocate of Nigeria's Son, objected to Kanu's remarks and asked for a definite date for hearing. He said the chief judge returned the case file to Nyako for Kanu to officially raise his objection to the judge's continued handling of the case. Owomolo said since Kanu refused to file such a proper application, it was wrong for him to insult the court. However, following his objection, Mrs. Nyako adjourned the matter indefinitely. Kanu, who has been in custody of the State Security Service, the SSS, since 2021, is standing trial before the judge on charges of terrorism and treasonable felony arising from his separatist activities. IPOB, a proscribed group led by Kanu, is agitating for the secession of Nigeria's southeast states and parts of some neighboring states as a sovereign Biafra nation. Another look at the top stories. United Nations holds operations in Houthi area after staff detained. North Korea vows retaliation as U.S. submarine docks in Busan. Trump imposes 25% tariff on steel aluminum, says no exemptions. Trump administration to bar transgender people from military, and Trump warns of chaos if Hamas keeps hostages past Saturday.